Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Happy Huddle. As you know, we are here once a week from 9 a.m. to 9:30, or you can catch a replay if you go to Happier by the Minute, you can subscribe to the Happy Huddle, and then you get access to all the past ones. So you don't really have to be live, but if you are, welcome. I'm super excited to have you here. You can either be a subscriber, you can be on Facebook Live. I'm super excited to have you. We meet here so that we can learn and practice the tools of happiness, which are really positive psychology. And today we are going to be talking about resilience, how to become resilient. And I watched a really great talk by this guy, Sri Kumar Rao, and he is a speaker for MindValley Academy. If you don't know them online, it's a really great resource for some really amazing podcasts, not podcasts, but lessons and online courses. And you do it with a whole community and a whole group, which I really love. And one thing he talked about, I have to read it so I don't get it wrong, but he talked about Sangha, which is a Buddhist pillar, and it's where the community is traveling on a path together. And sometimes you feel weak and you need the help of someone who is sometimes you're feeling weak and you need the help of someone who is feeling strong, and they will support you. And sometimes you are the one who's feeling strong and you will reach out and help those who are weaker. And I really love that idea. And that's how I feel about this community, is that we're here to support each other. When we're feeling strong, we help others. And when we're feeling weak, others will help us. So make sure that you have a tribe around you that does that. So let's get into resilience. I do want to point out, I don't think you're going to hear the message that you normally hear or that you think you're going to hear, because this is not about suck it up and just get through it. This is a little bit of a twist on this, so I hope you're ready. So first of all, let's check in. Resilience. I love to go to the dictionary, start out with what a definition is. And the definition of resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, elasticity. So let's really look at this, because it's super important that you know where you're starting from. So resilience is to quickly recover from difficulties. Now, let's make sure we understand that difficulties are the things that are not as we expected. So not getting the job, getting fired, not getting the check, not having the relationship. Those are the things that we want and we expect. And so that's what makes them difficult, is because of our expectation. So we're going to follow this path a little bit more. And I want to tell you a little story. It's a Taoist parable called Good or Bad, or some people say good luck or bad luck, who knows? So it's a story about a farmer, and he has a horse and he's not doing very well. So he lets him go and he lets him leave his pasture. And the neighbors come over and they say, "Ooh, that's bad luck. Your horse is gone. That's really bad luck. That was your only horse." And the farmer says, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" Well, the next day, the horse comes back and it brings with it 20 stallions. The neighbors come over and they say, "Whoa, that is good luck." And he says, "Good luck or bad luck, who knows?" And then his son goes out to tame one of the wild horses, and the son falls off the horse and he breaks his leg. And the neighbors come over and they go, "Ooh, that's bad luck." And he says, "Good or bad, who knows?" The next day, the military comes and they're taking all the able-bodied boys to go off to war, and they don't take his son because he has a broken leg. And the neighbors say, "Ooh, that's good luck." What does he say? Good or bad, who knows? Really, really, really important parable, because it really is all about how we define things. And so today, what I'm really going to work on is not so much about how to just bounce back from things, but how to keep things from becoming difficult, a difficult thing that you need to bounce back from. Interesting. So it's a little bit of a twist. So we start with don't label things as good or bad. And, we use this dichotomy throughout our whole entire life that our work is good, our relationship is bad, our day is good, our day is bad, our sleep is good, our sleep is bad, our traffic, our drive to work is good or bad. And, we just need to stop labeling. I don't really think it's bad to good or bad. It's unhelpful to label things as good because that feels good. And if you label things as bad, it feels bad. And that's what takes you down the rabbit hole. So, things are just information and they either feel good or they don't feel good. And they're either what you expect or what you don't expect. So let's try to change what the expectation is and the label you put on them. So it really is when you label things as good or bad, my job is good or bad, my relationship is good or bad, you put yourself into this trap, and that's what causes us a lot of anxiety and struggle. So good things are constantly being born out of seemingly bad circumstances. Now, I did a huddle a couple weeks ago, and I don't remember which one it is, but you can go back and find them. And it really talks about the power of failure, and it's about failure and the perception of failure. And I have a whole list of people: Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, J.K. Rowling, Steve Jobs, all those people who all had seemingly failures in their lives, but they actually turned out to be really great things, and they actually made them, they became super successful in spite of those, or instead of those. They didn't let them define them. They didn't define it as this is bad, this is the end, this is I'm unsuccessful. And so we can learn a lot from them. So the question is there any benefit I can see in this situation? So what we see depends mainly on what we look for. Again, if you have this expectation of that it's supposed to be good, if you can just pause, one of the greatest things that we can ever do is pause between stimulus and reaction. So whenever something happens, good or bad, that we can pause and say, not going to label this. I'm not going to say this is good or bad. Somebody yelling me, somebody cutting me off. I'm not going to label this as good or bad. Is there a benefit I can see in this situation? Sometimes if someone cuts me off in the freeway, and then I ended up having to go slower or something, the first thing that I'll do, aside from going, ugh, is then I'll stop, I'll pause, and I'll say, you know what? Maybe they slowed me down because I'm going to miss an accident 30 seconds from now. I don't know. I don't know because I'm not there 30 seconds ago, or I don't know because I'm not going to see that other path that there would have been, but I can always change what I think that other path might have been. I know it gets a little bit heady here, but keep with me. So the thing that you really want to do is invest in the process, not the outcome. So again, it's that perception of what we think it should be. And it doesn't mean that you can't have goals, and it doesn't mean that you can't have dreams and desires. But once you set that path forward and you say, okay, this is where I want to go, don't worry about the success, hitting the target or not hitting the target, because what you set yourself up to do, if it's about hitting the target, I'm a success, you're going to label it that way. And if you miss the target, you suck. I suck. I'm not a success. So if you don't put that label on the outcome, then you are not going to be as stressed. You're not going to cause yourself as much pain. You're going to lessen the anxiety. And I know that's hard when people have quotas that they have to meet, or when you're really yearning to have a great relationship, or when you really want something to be done. But that's when you put you invest in the process of getting that relationship, of the dating, of the process of meeting that quota. Because if you invest in the process, it always, and I'm going to say always, turns out that you achieve it. And I mean, I can't really say always, so I take that back. If you don't achieve it, the other thing is that there might be a different message in it. And then you say, okay, well, what is it that I am supposed to learn from not getting it this time or yet. So you see where I'm going with this? So here's some thoughts what to do. Set your direction, detach from the outcome, that the outcome is going to be good or bad. If I fall in love, if I get the job, if I get that house, that's good or bad. It is neither good nor bad. Put your energy into the process. Do your best, because if you're always doing your best, then the outcome really doesn't even matter. And it really always does work out. Find the joy in the process, because remember, I did another huddle. What is a great life? A great life is just the accumulation of a bunch of great days. And what is a great day? The accumulation of a bunch of great moments. And great moments are of joy and finding the lesson and overcoming and detachment. And so these are all the tools that we're learning in these huddles to move through life with more joy. And then, of course, adjust as needed. Take the information. The other thing to think about when it comes to resilience is acceptance. And there is this word, and in Buddhist philosophy, is radical acceptance. Think of that word, write it down, radical acceptance. Gosh, if I could just radically accept, and that means things are as they are. You can't change them. You can't do anything about them. There are people out there and things that are going to happen that we don't have any control over. That is just the reality. There is nature, Mother Nature. There are other people. There is a divine system out there that is outside of us. But if we can just radically accept, and it is not easy, believe me, when someone's yelling you, to say, okay, I accept the situation. Or certainly after years and years and years of pain of being in a bad relationship or having a bad job. But the way to move forward is to say, okay, to not keep ruminating, don't keep questioning, don't keep trying to understand it, don't keep trying to change it. Just radically accept where you are. If you're sitting in traffic, I mean, it's for the little things and the big things. Once you radically accept where you are, then you can move forward. I saw this really great picture when I was looking up photos for radical acceptance of this man standing in front of his house right after a hurricane. So his house was flattened, just a bunch of boards in a chimney. And he had a great big smile on his face with a great big sign that said, "For sale, price reduced, some assembly required." And there's somebody who said, all right, here's where we are. Now what do we do? And then there's a great story of Thomas Edison, who his lab was burning down one night. He was home at dinner and someone ran to him and said, oh my gosh, you have to come. The building is on fire. And he ran out there. And as soon as he got there, he turned to his son and he said, son, go get your mom and tell her to bring all of her friends. They will never see a fire like this again. It's amazing. Because there were all these chemicals and there were all these lights and it was the most brilliant fire. He didn't freak out. He couldn't just start throwing, some water on it. It was at the place where he just had to radically accept what was happening and just look at it with awe. I heard another story of a woman, and she's a Buddhist monk, and she came home one day and her whole entire house had been robbed. She'd been robbed and everything, most of the things were gone. And she walked in and she said, well, I guess it's not mine anymore. I guess it's not for me anymore. Those things aren't mine anymore. They're somebody else's. I'm not meant to have them anymore. And, I'm not saying we're going to get here overnight. These are things that we practice. This is why we do this every single week. We practice so that when, if we practice on the little things like traffic or like, they don't have the right yogurt at our store in stock, or we didn't get that call back. When we practice with those little things, then when the big things happen, God forbid that they happen, but if they do, that you can look at them and say, okay, this is what's happening. And now what? And now what? And that, again, is one of the most powerful things that you can ever do. So in that, again, change the perception and it changes the experience. So you can easily change the perception when you recognize, I love this, the fact that you made up the perception in the first place, just based on the beliefs and the past experiences. So I can look at something that looks really horrible and have a totally different experience about it. So for example, I could not get a job at the police academy, and I'm going to be okay with that because that's not something that's important to me. And I have a different perception about it, and I have different beliefs about that. But somebody who it's really important to, that is going to be more devastating to them. So it's the same situation. There's nothing different about not getting accepted into the police academy for either of us. It's just the situation, the experience. The situation isn't different, but how we experience it is different. So again, we got to go back to those beliefs. And, this is a picture you see in front of you. If you don't see it because you're driving, then you can go back again. When you subscribe, you can look at all these past huddles for free. But it's a picture that you can either see a chalice or a cup in black, or if you focus on the white space, you see two profiles of two faces looking at each other. So I don't know, you can type in the chat box if you can either see both of them. You can't see one, you can see the other. But again, it's just how you look at it. Are you looking at the dark space or are you looking at the white space? And so it is all about how we look at it. And we have the power to change how we look at things. If the person who was so set on getting into the police academy didn't get into it, then okay, maybe you're meant to do something else. Maybe something is better coming along. I showed a great video one week on failure of the man that started Alibaba. That man is so happy and he's making billions of dollars and he's doing a great service. But he told all of his failures, which included not getting into Harvard, not getting into the police academy, and not even getting a job at Kentucky Fried Chicken. And there were 4 applicants and 3 got in. So you just don't know that you are probably just meant for something better. And if you believe that, then you will be. So whether you believe you're meant for something better or you believe it's the end of the world, you are right. It's just what you believe. So imagine if you had no attachment to the expectation. If you didn't believe that whatever the end was the end. If it was just money or fame or validation if you had no fear of failure, how would your perception of that experience be different? So if you didn't get the relationship, so for example, I always have a story. So I invested a ton into this amazing relationship. I was in love. Most of us have this story. I was in love. I was going to marry this man. I moved to London. I gave up my whole life, my job, my car, my home in America, in California, and I moved to London. And it really was, everybody knew we were going to get married. It was the most amazing thing. And 6 months after being there, it fell apart. Well, my expectation was that I was going to live happily ever after. My expectation was that this validated me. I was lovable. Somebody did love me. Somebody did want to spend the rest of their life with me. Clearly not. And so then it was crushing. It was totally crushing because my happily ever after didn't happen. And then I wasn't validated. Maybe I wasn't lovable. Maybe I wasn't good enough. And then it just crushed me for the longest time. And then, of course, I can look back on it because, as you all know, I'm married to the most magical man and I have the most amazing children. And when I was in that period where it was really horrible, I just wanted someone to tell me, oh, he's coming. Oh, Barry's going to show up in like 2 years. You're going to have all these amazing children and you're going to have 2 amazing children. You're going to have this great house and your job's going to go amazing. And then you're going to start happier by the minute. It's going to be great. I would have been like, okay, I'm not going to cry anymore. This is great. I can wait 2 years. But I didn't. I got wrapped up in the beliefs of what that failure was. I got wrapped up into the beliefs of it. And so I would have been resilient if I'd have a different belief about myself and the outcome. And if I could have just enjoyed the journey of, hey, I'm in London. It's great. I was in love. That was awesome. I'm home again. Yay, something new. It's not that easy. But again, I'm just giving you all these different perceptions, of 360-degree perception of the same situation, how you can look at it from different ways. So let me keep going. So again, it's this daily self-awareness, because if you can do this with little things in your day, then the big things are not going to be as hard. It's not going to be about bouncing back and overcoming the challenges as hard as they would be. And look, there are going to be things that are going to be harder than others. I'm not saying that, if death happens, that you're going to be like, okay, well, I can handle traffic. I can handle this. It's just you're building up this reserve of perception, that maybe your perception about death changes and it isn't about the end. And, that you can learn something. Certainly we can all learn a lot from Sheryl Sandberg and what she's gone through. And she's got a great book called Plan B, and her life isn't what she thought it was going to be, but Plan B is turning out pretty good too. It didn't mean that she didn't have a hard time, but there's a Plan B also. So become consciously aware what's happening around you, and so that you can point things out. I mean, so many people are living unconsciously, and now you know. So you cannot unknow that consciousness and self-awareness is so paramount to being happier. So you know that. So when things happen, you can't just pretend they're not happening, or that they're all bad, or that failure leads to failure. You know these things now. Recognize how quickly you pass judgment and labeling things as good or bad. That the line at the grocery store is good or bad. That not going for a run today is good or bad. Or those things are just how you're labeling them. And I use good a lot because it makes me feel good. It puts me in a good vibration. So the challenge with using good is that the opposite of good is bad. So if you can use good and then use the opposite of good as it's either good or it's different, it's a lesson, it's a challenge. I never try to ever use the word bad. I might use the word challenge. But again, it's a challenge to change my perception. It's not necessarily bad. So again, you cease the judgment, you accept things as they are, and then you practice the tools. So again, I'm going to remind you of some of the tools that we've talked about, because these are so critical. Observe. This is interesting. Get curious, and just look at the situation. Observe it as you're a third party. Take the emotion out of it. If somebody is saying you did a really bad job at something, try to take the emotion out of it and say, okay, that's interesting. What can I learn from this? Reframe it. Things aren't always as bad as they seem. Look for any possible good. So when you didn't get that job, reframe it. Okay, not meant to be this. Okay, maybe there's something better. Know that bad things are temporary. Everything is temporary. So if you get your heart broken, it's temporary. It is temporary. If you believe it's temporary, but if you hang on to it, guess what? It's not temporary anymore. Accept, radical acceptance. I use that word. I keep a Post-it note with it. Radical acceptance. Because once I accept it, then I can move on to change it, or I can move around it. There's a great story about there's an engineer who's asked to build a road through a forest. And there's a swamp and a river and a forest. And the engineer doesn't get mad at the forest and the swamp and the river. He doesn't have any emotion about them. He just accepts that they are there, and he figures out how to work around them. So be the engineer of your life, and don't get mad at the obstacles that are put in front of you. Accept them And again, the little ones first, the medium ones next, the big ones after that. And then you can navigate better. Think of yourself as this flowing river around rocks, you know? The water doesn't get stuck at the rock, it just goes around it. And sometimes it's faster and sometimes it's slower. Trust. I love this quote by Rumi. What you seek is seeking you. And if you believe that in your heart and soul, and you remind yourself every day, what you seek is seeking you, then you aren't going to get so upset. So if what I seek is a really amazing job that makes me really good money, then if I don't get the one I applied for today, I know that that amazing job where I'm making a lot of money and I'm making impact is seeking me. And so it's just not in this one job. And I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep going. And there's lots of other huddles that'll help you work through that keep going, and some other tools. So please go back and watch them. They're only half an hour, and there's a lot of good stuff in them. And then, of course, this is one I use all the time. Everything always works out for me. And so if I don't get that job, if that relationship doesn't work, or if that publisher doesn't want that book, everything always works out for me. J.K. Rowling was rejected, I think 19, some people say 19, some people 26 times before Harry Potter was accepted. And I will bet on the 8th one it was hard, on the 9th one was hard, the 10th one, but she probably said every time, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. What I seek is seeking me. Everything always works out for me. And that's what happens. So just keep holding on that what you seek is seeking you. The more positive you are through the hardest situations, the quicker and easier you will attract what you are seeking. And then there's the benevolent universe, or the benevolent God, that you believe that it's caring and kind and that it's got your back. That the universe and God are not here to punish you and make it a challenging, difficult situation. Your wife or your husband isn't here to make it a horrible world. Your children aren't here to make it horrible. Your boss isn't here to make your world horrible. The universe has your back. Don't put your focus on those things that are challenging. So here are, I like to practice. So maybe you have a piece of paper and a pen. Here are some questions that I want you to ask yourself, because we always want to practice it. I only have a few more minutes because I'm rambling on with all my examples, but you can always go back and answer these questions afterwards, but they're really, really important. Identify an event in the past that you thought was the worst thing that ever happened to you. You didn't get that job, you got fired, that relationship, a tree fell on your house. Identify what was the worst thing that ever happened to you. And then now list the ways that you realize that it benefited you. I have no doubt that you can look on situations that you thought were absolutely the worst ever, and you can say, actually, this came about from it. This came about from it. That I became more resilient. The tree fell on my house. I got a better house. I got more money from insurance. I didn't like that area anyway. Whatever it is, I got firewood out of it. So what are the things that came out of that ended up being good? Go back and remember those times, because they will help you get through the future times. Now, here's another key. Identify an event that is currently happening in your life that you have labeled as bad. What's happening right now that you have labeled as bad? And then, of course, what are the ways that when you look back on this a few years from now, you can say, because that happened, because I was working for that bad boss, because I was in that bad job, because I was in that bad relationship, these are all the things that I learned or that I grew. It pushed me out of my comfort zone. It made me go get a different job. It made me move, and then I moved to I might want to move to a new area and meet new people. So there are all kinds of things. So really explore what has happened in the past, what you learned from it, what's happening right now, and can you challenge yourself? Can you to think about the ways that it could be a good thing? I love this. Here's a great one about perception. This is from Mr. Rogers. We all remember him well. I'm kind of dating myself here. He says, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I am always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in the world. Again, it's reframing, it's perception, it's how you see it. And so when you look at bad things, look for the good in what's happening around you, outside of you, to you. And then we will be happier. My friends, it has been a half an hour already. I can't even believe how quickly it is. For some of you, come join me at the after party at the web link that you were sent earlier, and we'll talk about what you've been learning, what you've been loving. All of you who are watching on Facebook Live, or you're watching a past version of this, you can see these live. Just go to happierbytheminute.com and subscribe to the Happy Huddle. Not only can you watch these live every Friday at 9, and again, we try to be consistent about this, so you've got a consistent time and a consistent way to practice the tools, because if you just try to cram them into one weekend, you're not going to get the habit formed. So again, really, really appreciate all that you guys do to help yourselves and work on yourselves. And thank you so much for letting me be on this journey with you and help you teach you some of these tools. So again, super grateful. Have